Welcome. I'm Larry Olsen, and this is the Brain Vault Podcast. Did you know that the thoughts you're thinking right now are shaping the life you live tomorrow? Well, in this podcast, we just don't talk about mindset. We decode the blueprint behind behavior, performance, and possibility. This is where science meets real-world strategy, and your brain stops running on autopilot. If you're ready to turn default thinking into intentional living, you're in the right place. Well, welcome. And, life is a bunch of choices, as we all know, and you've made an amazing one by joining us today. And I want to ask you a question. I want you to think about this as a leader. What if the biggest reason your people aren't performing at their highest level isn't their ability, their attitude, or their motivation, but the way they're being led in that moment? Welcome to the Brain Vault Podcast, where science meets success, and we explore not only what great leaders think, but how they think. Today, I'm joined by Sam, Shriver and Suzie Bishop from the Center for Leadership Studies, the global home of the original situational leadership model. Now, Sam brings more than 45 years of experience and is one of the world's foremost authorities on situational leadership. He's designed and delivered over 200 leadership and coaching programs and helped leaders across industries, cultures, and generations turn leadership theory into real-world performance. And as you'll see, we're all blessed to have the two of them with me today. Suzie, by the way, is Vice President of Product Development and represents the next generation of this powerful model. She spent more than a decade transforming how situational leadership is taught and applied for today's modern learner, making a proven 50-year-old framework even more relevant in a world of constant disruption, changing expectations, and artificial intelligence. Together, they are the authors of Situational Leadership, the model for leading others, navigating change, and unlocking performance. Today, we'll uncover why one-size-fits-all leadership fails and how meeting people where they are can unlock trust, performance, and human potential. Sam and Suzie, welcome to the Brain Vault Podcast.
Thank you, Larry. Much appreciated.
Pleasure to be here, Larry.
Outstanding. Let me start out with this. Why can treating everyone the same actually be one of the least effective ways to lead? And how do great leaders recognize what someone truly needs in the moment?
Yeah, so I think the issue with treating everybody the same is they have different levels of performance, and they have different levels of performance for the different things that they do. And so treating everyone the same is often a default mode that leaders go into because it feels comfortable and safe for them versus that being, other-centered or others-focused on what the individual needs. So it's kind of putting people, we call it like typecasting. You're either a high performer or a low performer or this or that. You're a new employee or a tenured. And we kind of look at things more so from the lens of it depends. And it depends on the individual, like for the task, for their level of performance. So you never want to put somebody in that box. But Sam, I would love to hear what you have to the first part of that question, and we could circle back to the second part.
Sure.
Too.
And by the way, Larry, we're used to softball questions when we start these things out. That was actually pretty hard. So, yeah. But yeah, I think the first thing, and as Suzie was talking, the first thing that hits me about leaders that have a style and just roll with that style and expect everybody else to adjust to them, they're really selfish. There's a lot of ego going on there for some reason to say, okay, here's me, this is the way I am. And you know what? Like, I'm consistent, and so you should just enjoy my consistency, and we'll march on into the future there. And when you think about it, having that one style and implementing it in every situation is probably the most inconsistent thing you can do as a leader if you want to be effective. Because no big mystery here, right? People are different, but stay with the same person. As Suzie was alluding to, stay with just one individual. Boy, if you ask them to do one thing, they can be at an entirely different level of comfort, confidence, motivation, and ability than if you ask that exact same person to do something they've never done before and are intimidated by. So the whole idea of, as Suzie mentions, it depends, which is kind of our mantra. Every style works, right? Every style doesn't. Empowering is great, except when it's perceived as abandonment. Giving direction is great, except when it's perceived as micromanagement. And participation is great, except when it's perceived as manipulation.
Gotcha.
So all the styles work, all the styles don't. It depends on the person and what you're asking that person to do.
That's a great insights. And I want to just delve in a bit to the fact that when we're little and somebody says they're going to share their candy bar with us and they break it in half and then they keep the biggest half and give us the smallest half, we all have this innate response that that's not fair. And so as you grow up and you get into leadership, you begin to recognize the biases and the prejudices you have based on the results that people have gotten. And you develop, as we all know, these preconceived notions. So there's this other mindset that, well, I better treat everybody the same, or they're going to think I have these prejudices and biases. How do you help them break through that and realize that that's not going to get them what they want from their people, or their people aren't going to get what they want from the organization?
Suzie, I want to go first this time. Is that okay?
Please.
Yeah, I think like the consistency when you're implementing the situational leadership model, the consistency comes from the leader treating high performers in a similar way, treating people that are growing and developing in a similar way, and treating people that are someplace in the middle of novices and experts in a similar way. So there's this entire continuum of behaviors that you have the option to use as a leader that run from, like I say, empowerment or delegation on one end to direction and guidance on the other, with participation in the middle. And what we are strong over on is don't limit yourself to one set of behaviors. Really take a look at what you're doing and who you're doing it with. And I think it's a critical point there in the question there, is that a situational leader identifies the task and then objectively assesses ability and willingness. And boy, that's a key word that, as you know, it's very easy to say and very difficult to do. So the better you get as a situational leadership, there's a lot of your brain in there, right? You have to recognize, what are my biases? What are my prejudices? Am I giving this person, something unfairly different than I'm giving this person over here? So the whole idea of objectively assessing, and not only doing it from the standpoint of you as a leader with the follower as kind of an innocent bystander. What you're doing, hopefully, is getting the follower to align around their readiness to perform and discuss it openly and agree upon, this is something I've never done, and I don't have a track record here. So I think, to be honest with you, I would love all the guidance I can get from you or anybody else so that I get started on the right foot. Or, this is something I could do with my eyes closed, and so what do I need you or anybody else around for to do it? But so to just go through that process of really thinking about what is the task, who is the person, what makes the most sense, and what gives me the highest probability of success.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Something that comes to mind that I want both of you to speak on is, we have been brought up since we can remember to respect authority. And to the degree we do has a lot to do with how we move from one level to another. Well, you've got a lot of employees that are intimidated by leaders to begin with, because of the position they're in, or it makes them feel less than, depending on what their style is. And, whether they're the kind of leader, the old style, when I want your opinion, I'll give it to you, or they're the type of leader that says, here's our task. What are some ideas on the best way to approach? We have these oceans in between the two styles. But how do you assist a leader in recognizing that just their presence alone can stifle the conversation, or a person's ability to say, yeah, I'm willing, and then worried, well, what if I'm not there? And I know that I've looked into your works and the style and the platform that you use, and I believe it's invincible. I'm just curious about, because I'm sure you deal with these types of things.
Yeah.
You set up this beautiful stage, and then somebody comes in and just, where'd you come from? What is it you don't get about what we're doing?
Yeah.
So how do you help them? And you mentioned it earlier, Sam, about the huge ego that they have to begin with. And, that can be positive and negative, as we know. But how do you help them grow beyond that? And what do you do when you recognize that?
Yeah, we do talk a lot about power dynamics. I mean, the truth is it exists, whether that's because we were taught growing up to respect authority, but there's so many unspoken places where you recognize power as well, whether some people, and I know, we're kind of getting rid of a lot of these things, but like the corner office or their parking spot, or there's so many things that like signal power to people, title, who's running the meeting, all of those things. So, power does exist. We call that, position power or legitimate power. Okay. We also talk a lot about expert power. And whether you have expertise in a certain area, or that could be where you went to school or research, or maybe you've grown up in the company. So you have expertise like working within that specific system. So people may look at your power in that way. Gotcha. But how we talk a lot about the dynamic, because again, these power does exist, is regardless of your role in the organization, your hierarchy, you're going to be most influential if you have what we call referent power, which is trust with others.
What was the word you used?
Referent power, which is trust.
Gotcha. Reference. Okay. Thank you.
And so if you can be aware of that power dynamic and how, regardless of your position in the company or your expertise, if you lead from a place of trust, that's the most power that you can have with others. And again, you could have a natural style where you do direct more, maybe you delegate more, but if you have trust with others, that's kind of your foundation in which you lead from. I would love to hear, Sam, your perspective, but yes, you can't get rid of power, but I think building people's awareness around, regardless of these dynamics, if you put most of your power into trust and building that with others, you'll be the most successful.
When you talk, excuse me for a moment, when you talk about reference power, are you talking about frame of reference?
Referent with a T on the end.
Referent.
Yes.
Ah, okay.
Yes. And it's
define that for me.
With others. Building trust. Your power base is trust, referent.
Okay. And do you folks give them insights into how to build trust?
Absolutely. Yeah. Sam, you go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, Larry, I don't know how you talk about leadership without talking about power. And we define leadership as an attempt to influence, and power as influence potential. And we all know the age-old hierarchically driven position power. So your boss is your boss because your boss is your boss, and he or she can tell you things to do, and you'd better comply with those things. I think more and more, and with increasing regularity, there's a power shift, right? Yeah. I mean, people in our generation
should be anyway, right?
Yeah. Well, I think people in our generation, we kind of got it, and we thought that way. And okay, your boss tells you something, you go do it. I think in this day and age, you've got to earn the right to influence much more. And I think it's a better world.
My children have taught me that.
So as Suzie mentions the whole idea of trust, you can't talk about leadership without using the T word. But how do you develop trust, especially if you're put into a set of circumstances where you don't know somebody and you have to influence them. Most organizations don't say, well, we'll wait around for you to develop trust before we want you to lead. So you got to develop that trust as quickly as possible. And when you ask, like, what do we tell people about that? Mm-hmm. Well, one of the primary ways very early on that you can develop trust with people is to match your approach to their level of performance need. So if you're trying to influence somebody that needs direction and you give them direction, I think arguably those people walk away from that interaction and go, wow, that felt good. Now I know what I'm doing. And the other side of it is if you've got somebody that knows what they're doing and loves doing it and you let them do it and you get out of their way, that person goes, well, good. They're leaving me alone. So your style impacts your referent power, trust level, all those kinds of things. And the more of that you build, the more options you have as a leader to use any of the styles. So those things, absolutely go together. And typically, not all the time, but like typically that's how we approach it. Leadership does not happen in a vacuum. There's a lot of stuff that goes on out there. So it's more than just the 4 steps to the situational leadership model, although we would argue those are critical steps.
Sure. Yeah.
But those steps are driven by or fueled by your ability to put people at ease, help them feel safe, and just have real conversations about real challenges.
So for the most part, and very well said, by the way, but for the most part, then you're not even engaging with these companies or clients if they don't recognize that they have an opportunity to definitely improve performance in all their people. And so they're kind of driven behind the sense of purpose that we're becoming more efficient, we're utilizing our time better, and we ultimately are going to be better off than before we started. The only caveat is, can I embrace this? And just the style that the two of you come across with, to me, it's easy to embrace. And so, kudos for that.
Well, good. It would be awful if that wasn't the case. So good.
Yeah, that'd be a tough one to overcome. You'd have to spend some more time on that one. But give us all kind of an idea about, because this sounds like, we know as parents we'd like to treat all our children the same, but nobody is the same. Yeah. The sociologist had once stated that the history of man, only 72 billion people had stood upright in this thing called planet Earth, and currently there's around 8 billion, and not one has our fingerprint or genetic blueprint. So we aren't the same, right from the get-go, and to be able to acknowledge that is so empowering. It's so it allows people the opportunity to realize that in spite of what I've been able to do up to this moment in time, doesn't mean I can't go beyond this. And so I wanted like to find out too, what keeps both of you in this? What is it about it that floats your boat so that you're passionate about what it is that you're doing? Because as you know as well as I do, that makes all the difference in the world. We can have someone come in and they're just going through the steps, but they just aren't leaking and infusing that energy and excitement into us. So what drives the two of you? I'd really be curious.
Well, first off, I was laughing a little bit because I have 2 boys, 3 and 6, and you are correct that neither of them are the exact same, and they take wildly different approaches to not just parenthood, but everything else. But yeah, like, why do I love this work? I think I do love kind of like the term helping people, and it's like, well, how do I help people? And it's like, if I can help them be more effective in whatever they want to influence, like if their motivation is they work in hospitals or they work in tech and want people to be able to communicate more seamlessly, or they work in travel so that loved ones can see each other, their day to day, if I can help them be a better leader in that situation and fulfill their needs, that's very motivating to me. And that's why I love this line of work. It's like someone would ask, who's your typical client? It's like, well, everyone needs leadership. So I work with nonprofits to the largest tech companies in the world, to manufacturing, healthcare, everywhere in between. So I also love, the diversity of the work, because it's just all people, because I believe that all people are leaders. And so I just, I love this work and being able to help people be a little bit more effective in their day-to-day, their families. I think it goes way beyond the workplace. If you can lead better, you're going to be in a better relationship, better marriage, you're better in your community, you're better. So wherever you want to influence, I feel like we have something that can really help you do that. And that's really meaningful work.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Suzie. Sam,
And
what
by the
about
way,
you?
by the way, I can tell you that Suzie is like very good at this leadership thing as a
Gotcha.
practitioner. In the book, it's sort of like I'm Father Time, right? So I kind of have access to a lot of the history and a lot of the
Sure.
things where we came from. And she, I think, provides examples like she just spoke to, inside of work and outside of work about, so I'm in the trenches now as a millennial, and what does this look like? And how do I use this model?
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, yesterday, I finished a blog post that focused on me answering the question, when do you use situational leadership as a practitioner? And to be honest with you, I can't remember not using it. I mean, I had the opportunity in 1981, and I know, Suzie, you were a long way from being born. But in 1981, I watched Dr. Hersey, the developer of situational leadership, 5 blank flip charts in front of the room back when that's how you did instructor leadership.
Transparencies overhead.
Back in the old days, okay. and he in a half a day kind of went through 50 years of research in behavioral science and got to the situational leadership model. And like that day, I said to myself, like, this is what I want to do. This model, this thing. And part of it, Larry, is because it's easy to remember it as a practitioner. What do we do? Step 1, what are we doing here? What's the task? Step 2, who am I doing it with? What's their level of ability and willingness to pulling that off? That's the answers to those questions are going to dictate what I should do. And again, if I can get into the mode of really adopting flexibility, as a plan of action. So to me, the utility of this framework, it's like it dominates any opportunity that I have to influence anyone else or process the way they're influencing me.
Well, it sounds like it's a perpetual, continuous improvement model.
Yes.
The worst thing can happen is you get better.
Well, and yet the other thing is that there's always a place to start. Like when you don't know what to do, which is, all 3 of us are going to have 15 of those scenarios today.
Yep.
When you don't know what to do, you can take a step back. And I mean, your work has lots of, what's your vision? Because you can be successful, so figure out what that is and then move forward based on that. I think, I don't want to, discount your very important work, but to me, that's what I get out of it. The same way with situational leadership, it starts at the task. What are we trying to accomplish? How do we form a relationship around that work? So once we know what the task is, what good looks like, we can then begin to align on what do you need here? What do you need from me? And it's really the opposite of, in many respects, of the way you, I, and others in our generation grew up, which is, you waited for your boss to come down the mountain with the tablets and tell you what to do. Yeah. I mean, today, and it's one of the reasons I think this model is so much more relevant today. It's always been relevant, but it's so much more relevant today than it has been because of all the change. Yeah. People would care a whole lot less about leadership if it wasn't for change. And change, as we know, is like, it's all over the place, right? And it's not going anywhere. So the more change there is, the more leadership you do. And this at least gives you a place to start. Suzie, I know I ran off at the mouth there, so there's got to be something that you want to say,
I
to.
answered, so back to Larry.
I thought you might want to rebuttal or something.
Yeah, no, I'm fascinated by anything that breaks that whole Gallup challenge of 3 out of 4 associates being disengaged. And we know they're not terrorists. We just know they're staring at a computer thinking about something else. So there's this lack of efficiency with the time that they have. And we know the power of acknowledgement. And we know that, people can pretty much in their own mind go work any way they want. And so I see what you do as very engaging. And I also see it as, a lot of the work that I do when I help an organization develop a sense of purpose or vision that's stronger than any one individual and is greater than in the sense that it inspires them to be yearning to make that happen. And what you're doing, and I kind of call it a third party. So when Suzie and I agree that respect means this, and then we see one of us not doing that, we have a conversation about it, but it's not belittling because we're conversing about the value of respect. And we have peer working with peer. I see the same thing happening with what you're doing. You're teaching people through their mirror neurons that, am I examining this? Do I have the wherewithal to pull this off? Do I know why I'm doing it? And what happens is you're now growing exponentially through your process, which I can imagine just, a waiting line of people wanting to go to work with you too, because this is really groundbreaking. And it doesn't matter how old it is. I mean, a lot of ideas are thousands and thousands of years old. It's about how contemporarily efficient and effective it is, regardless of someone's background, ethnicity, sex. It doesn't matter. And I think that is where the universality comes in, that all of us are seeking, is to make a connection with another human being that allows them to be better as a result.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And sounds like the work you're doing. So let me ask you this. We all in our business sometimes have clients we'd like to fire. And that's really only happened to me when I was younger and needed the money. And now as you get more discerning, right, you have a lot more fun at what you do. But what have you guys found this model assist when you get this pushback or this resistance, or you're looking at each other with Suzie, what have we got ourselves into on this one? You're both confident you'll figure your way out, but what do you two do in those kind of moments, or have you had them?
When we receive resistance from clients on the model?
Or just their nature to begin with?
I think, well, first kind of to your Gallup study piece, because I did get really excited about just having some of that conversation as well. And just wanted to highlight, we very much are this is not like what a leader is doing to others conversation. This is with. Yeah. And so I, as an individual contributor, maybe kind of lower in the hierarchy, doesn't matter. I have self-leadership. I have ownership over my work, and I'm accountable to that work as well. So kind of any sort of dynamic which may kind of come to a company that might like push back on us is, potentially a culture that says, our managers just need this, or what we're trying to do is we utilize situational leadership as a common language in organizations to talk about performance. And that is, if it's a conversation, that's two people or multiple people. That's not to someone. And so kind of taking that Gallup study piece around disengagement and, well, what about the follower? Well, we think that they have a major contribution, if not the most important contribution, like to this leadership conversation. So where we might get pushback, like you said, is, this has been around for 50 years. So sometimes there's just kind of a negative, well, if something came around 50 years ago, how's it relevant today? But I think Sam spoke to that perfectly, is Well, this model, its foundation is adaptability. It's all about a leader adjusting their style to the needs of others. So someone who kind of doesn't really buy this notion of, building trust, that multiple parties are involved in this, and that a creative or a common language around performance is not necessary, would be someone that we would kind of have a hard time breaking through us having an impact in their organization.
They'd probably be in no danger of being a client because they're not ready yet. I mean, they've got some maturity and growth that needs to occur, or they have to have more failures before they realize what they're doing is not working.
What I will say, though, is oftentimes, because very few organizations would make any of the claims that I just shared, a lot of times it comes down to an individual, which is why we kind of get into the executive coaching realm as well. A lot of times you hear, like, we have a specific problem. This individual has all the skills in the world. They've risen to the top. They've driven us towards this, but they are so grossly unaware of how they come across. But we feel like if we let them go, well, then we're not going to be as successful. And so sometimes you're brought in more for kind of like those personalized pieces.
They almost feel like they're held hostage.
Right.
Yeah.
But Sam, I'll let you go kind of what pushback we might
There was so much there, and I know we're probably approaching time, but that doesn't impact me at all, Larry. That's your responsibility to cut us off.
That's right.
But one thing, and we get to this as kind of a central focus in the book, is that leadership is multi-directional. So we define it, as I said before, as an attempt to influence. Well, certainly that can go top down, that can go bottom up, that can go laterally. So there's no direction, associated with the utility of situational leadership. The other thing, and I'll bet it makes you as sick as it makes me, I can't remember any report on engagement from Gallup or anywhere else where it was much higher than 30% of the people are engaged. And so after a while, I mean, I start looking at that, and I know Marshall Goldsmith and others do as well, is like, well, what the heck is wrong with all these unengaged people? I mean, like, what responsibility are they taking for their own engagement? So if you're not getting what you want out of your boss, one option, I guess, is just to sit there and hope your boss gets smarter. The other is to help him or her, right? The other is just to go to him and say, boy, by the way, like I could be doing a lot more, or I need some real direction here.
Great point.
There's no rule that says you can't communicate that, and by doing that, you're more engaged and you're more part of the process. But if you take at any level in an organization, if you take sort of this passive, I don't want to get hurt, I don't want anybody, something bad's probably going to happen sooner or later.
Sure.
You're either going to be dissatisfied, or you're going to be expendable, or, a lot of different things.
Just like you're saying, the unfortunate thing is they're going to go to another company and be the victim again.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not allowing themselves the opportunity to, like you say, to be proactive about this.
Yeah. And I very much agree with that. I
couldn't agree more. And I would wonder too, is there some kind of a bias in just the questions that they're asking that people like bad news more than good news, right? So people listening to this right now are in a multitude of situations, and situational leadership could be, very appropriate. How would one go about not only figuring out how to get a hold of you guys and getting that wonderful book that you're launching, but how do they now maybe apply this to themselves so that they can kind of get unstuck and get back at it again?
Mm-hmm. Well, first, to get in touch with us, all over LinkedIn, so Suzie Bishop or Sam Shriver. We also work at the Center for Leadership Studies, so you can follow our company on LinkedIn as well. And then our website is situational.com. And our book is now available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all large retailers. So very excited about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I think if a leader today is, feeling stuck and wants to be more effective. It's vulnerable. It's a hard conversation, but I think if you truly want to be effective is having a conversation with your people and asking them, how do I naturally show up in our one-on-ones or our team meetings, or what is it like to interact with me as your leader? And I think just starting to build some of that self-awareness around what your natural leadership style or tendencies might be is a starting point to kind of opening your eyes into how you come across. And that's greatly beneficial for how you want to lead moving forward.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, as a very wise man once said, the ability to succeed lies within us all. Oh, wait, Larry, that was you. But I really think that
that was situational leadership.
I mean, so many parallels, right? I mean, if you are, regardless of your level in the hierarchy or whatever, if you're tired of just the same old thing and you, for whatever reason, want to improve and you want to get better at leadership, please be solaced by the knowledge that you can. That all of us, that leadership is a skill. It's a skill you can learn. There are fundamentals to it. You can practice those fundamentals and you can get better. And I think our model and what we talk about in this book is like, there's a lot of those skills, that are in there. So if you want to get better at leadership, and by the way, kind of a depressing thing from my standpoint, there's a lot of people that don't. There's a lot of people that, they don't aspire, to that kind of thing. And I suppose you just have to recognize, well, not everybody wants to play baseball. Okay. Well, so, but yeah, as it applies to leadership, there's so many ways that getting better at leadership can improve the quality of your life at work, at home, as Suzie was mentioned, really anywhere that you influence others. But I think the whole idea of recognizing that leadership isn't something that you're born with or, like born without. Yeah. It's certainly certain people, have varying amounts of natural talent as it applies to that skill, just like any other one. But you can learn, you can get better, and you can improve. So that's what I would say is take the step, go to our website or, like anybody that's teaching leadership, dive in, take that step, have the courage to educate yourself, and then far more importantly, to practice.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for the insights and recognizing that when 95% of leaders have a well-defined inferiority complex and better known as the imposter syndrome, the good news is you're in good company, because that's a pretty strong figure, because I think any of us recognize that we're not perfect. We're works in progress, if nothing else. And you folks are giving them skill sets where they recognize they don't have to be anybody other than who they are, but they do have to have a desire and a curiosity about surrounding themselves with people that really want to go beyond where they currently are. And when we're connected with people like that, and the listeners that are listening to this right now, that's who you are. You don't get out of the womb without being that person to begin with. So stop arguing with yourself. And secondly, now that you are, what do you want to do about it? Sam, you nailed it when you said about these disengaged people. If you keep waiting to be engaged, my golly gee whizzers, you got to at least show up to the dance. You got to be going out to be noticed. But I think sometimes we keep waiting for the check to end up in the mail and the knock on the door. And I think that's not uncommon, yet it's not going to get them where they need to be. And that is to be having the time of their life in this once in a lifetime thing called life. You folks have brought amazing insights. I will never think about situational leadership the same way again. And I'm going to utilize what you've shared, and I want to get your book. And I want everybody out there who's listening, I highly recommend this book. This is a real deal. This is not just something fancy. This is tested through the time. It works. And if you're really tired of things that don't last and you have no sustainability, then you need to buckle up, pay attention to Suzie and Sam, and watch what a wonderful life you end up having. So thank you so much, both of you, for being here. We've got a members only group that I'm going to be introducing the two of them to. And then I've got an amazing question that'll really, really unpack all the things necessary to live the life that may now be only a wish. So all the best, Sam, all the best, Suzie, and everyone out there listening. Thank you all for your time. And once again, thank both of you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome.